If you like our content about training, then you'll love our programming too. Head to the notes below to grab a free week of general physical preparation. You get unlimited access to me and fresh programming every single week for less than $1 a day.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Hyperformance podcast. I'm lacking my loyal co-host Jacob Mosquito today, but he tells me he knows fuck all about Jiu Jitsu anyway, despite the fact that he's the only host of the podcast that does actively grapple at the moment. I've got returning guest, Australia's best grappler. Actually, like maybe that's become more controversial because there's a few contenders. We might need to see a head-to-head matchup. Josh Saunders, how you doing?
Good, mate. How are you? Yeah, a little bit controversial. Nothing too crazy, but there's a few of us doing really well in the scene, which is great.
Respond to the statement that Levi Jones-Leary is Australia's best grappler. I'm actually curious to get your take. I'm not even saying how I feel.
You know what?
Sorry if that's aggressive.
Nah, he might be a little bit more accomplished than me because he's trained in the gi and competed and won a lot of tournaments in the gi as well. So if you're talking just jiu-jitsu, I mean, maybe.
Bro, that was very diplomatic of you. I can tell you actually have legitimate respect for Levi because I've heard the way you typically talk about gi jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
That speaks volumes.
I despise it thoroughly, but yeah, like honestly, credit to him. He had a phenomenal showing on the weekend, last weekend or the weekend before. And I don't really know the guy all that much, but he's pretty good.
So you haven't crossed paths on the Aussie scene, because that's something I want to get into as well, because a big part of both of your developments has been training overseas. Well, actually, but that's been, part of it. And I'd be curious to hear about your thoughts on, is that still a necessary part if you want to be a truly elite international grappler? Does the Australian scene have the resources, not just in terms of the coaching, but more in terms of the exposure to elite grappling partners on a regular basis and the competition schedule as well?
It's a really good question. And I've only trained at the US 2 weeks at a time, 3 weeks at a time, twice.
Okay.
So all my
was this
both
ADCC end of camp situations?
Yeah, exactly right. Just to get acclimatized to the climate over there, just to get some better looks. Obviously, we're pretty friendly with Danaher, so it's good to get in the room and learn from him and all that sort of stuff. And Levi's done a lot longer camps. He's obviously trained at Unity for a very long time with Murillo, and I think he was at another gym previously as well, but he's done quite a fair stint. My rebuttal to this question, I get asked this all the time, when are you going to move to the US? When are you going to move to the US? Firstly, fuck you. Australia is the best country on earth. Easily. The quality of life here is 10x what it is
we
in the
copped
US.
a lot of shit for our government's response during shutdown, but Australia, I agree, yeah, underrated. We've gone from a bit overrated to super underrated on the international scene.
You know what? Everyone shits on Sydney, and I think it's really unfounded.
Yeah.
It really is. But my second rebuttal is that Alexander Volkanovski was pound for pound number one in the UFC from Wollongong on puzzle mats with amateur and some pro training partners. So
is rugby the best base for combat sports? Because that's where you came from. That was the first sport that you pursued initially, right? Rugby league. Oh, sorry, both of you were league boys, but rugby, as far as it's transfer to mixed martial arts, I think they're just all forms of rugby as good as each other.
It's the best legal performance enhancing drug you can take before your career.
Because people talk about how wrestling is such a good base for MMA, and I know Volkanovski had a little bit of a specific, was it Greco-Roman or maybe freestyle wrestling, but in league, it's like the wrestle is such a big component of the modern game.
You know what it is? It's the toughness aspect. Jiu-jitsu is very passive, very lackadaisical, very laid back, lay on my back, come hither. Rugby is, well, at least for me, for leagues, we used to have this saying in league called spaces, not faces. And I wholeheartedly disagreed because I wanted
you look for the face.
I wanted to run at one sternum instead of two shoulders. And I thought that made sense in my head. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to crack this guy in the middle. I'm going to set the tone. I'm going to call him a bitch on the way down. Then I'm going to get back up and I'm going to do it again. And that mentality is just devoid in jiu-jitsu. And so I think the reason, or MMA does a lot better job, but I think in jiu-jitsu specifically, it's those really tough, hardy individuals that do really well really quickly because they're not willing to just lay on their back and accept things. They're not willing to just go with the fold. They're like, no, I'm not going to let you do that. There's no way.
And it's been so funny seeing this meta shift in jiu-jitsu. You know that like Simpsons meme of Artie Ziff where he just like he's challenging Homer to a fight and he just rolls onto his back. He's like, enter my guard at your own peril or whatever. And that was jiu-jitsu, you know what I mean? Especially the perception of it early on. But then we've had this huge shift in the meta, whether it's just due to wrestlers who didn't make the Olympics entering grappling competitions or a trickle-down influence from MMA as well. I'd be curious to get your thoughts on where it sort of came from. And it's been so much more entertaining in my opinion. Having said that, there was something really palate cleansing and edgy about Levi Jones Leary just leaning into exactly that, being like, fuck this. I have literally no interest in wrestling. I'm not even going to fucking pretend. But shout out to him in the final because Cade Ruotolo was talking shit. And fucking only one man passed another man's guard in that contest.
Yeah, you know what's funny? There's always these people who are sort of on the fences in the sport and they're always whinging like, oh, you shouldn't be allowed to full guard. You should be penalized. Well, you should learn how to pass, actually. Like, what are you going to do about it? You come up against Alexander Karelin in the wrestling and you say, well, you shouldn't be able to lock your
You shouldn't be able to pick me up. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, you know what? You go into the hills of Russia with all the snow-capped mountains and pick up fridges for training. And then you'll be able to do the same thing.
Yeah. To be fair, it was crazy though, because even just as an observer, I was just looking at Levi's guard and I was like, one, what the fuck does anyone do about that? And also like I know jiu-jitsu guys are always working on passing, but is it guard retention? Guard retention is the term for like what Levi was doing. But he wasn't just retaining, he was threatening so much. It was fucking, it was the most aggressive shit. No one did shit to him on the first day. I felt like he had the hardest seat. Sorry, I am just filleting Levi. I'll get back to you in a second. I just feel like it's an interesting topic for anyone who's sort of listening to jiu-jitsu at the moment.
There's sort of been a changing of the guard in terms of just laying on your back and playing on your back and not being very offensive. And you saw that with the Miao players, 2019 ADCC. They kind of, they did well, but they didn't do as well as they had in previous years. And it's because they wanted to move the sport in a more offensive, aggressive, entertainment-based element. And so you get people who...
But still off the back. So aggressive, but still very much off the back.
Exactly. So now you get people who are like Lachlan Giles, who was very aggressive on his back with leg locks and all that sort of stuff, had this amazing run in 2019. And then you had Levi, who was kind of under his wing, but sort of still playing the gi and all that sort of stuff. Now they've shifted his game a little bit more to a more attacking style. Another really good example is...
Sorry, just 1 second. With the Miao brothers, they were gi though. And is it easier to be aggressive in the pajamas just because you've got so much more to grip onto and guys can't disengage as easily, or is that not the case?
I don't think so. I think it's harder because they just grip and they don't stop holding on to a specific part of the body or pants or something like that. And it just... That's why I don't like it. It's so slow and so boring to watch. Like,
it is so much slower.
Yeah, it's so slow. The difference between gi and no gi is grips in no gi are ephemeral. Grips in gi are very long lasting. And that has its positives and its negatives for both of those camps, essentially. That's the main difference.
Okay. Based off this, and because I think it's something where people were already unclear at it, when they're looking at jiu-jitsu, like what the fuck is a dominant position? Because most people are just exposed to it through MMA. Whereas all of a sudden, when you can't just pulverize someone's head with your fist, being off your back becomes a much more relatively dominant position. But then with the whole wrestling meta shift, I'm unsure about that. So what the fuck is a dominant position? Can you just give some examples? I guess, and it's always requiring a certain amount of context, I imagine.
The easiest way to think about it is if I can get all your limbs out of the way and get my chest connected to your chest. Typically, that's denoted as a dominant position. Obviously, the caveat to that is the back because my chest will be connected to your back. So as long as I can get your limbs out of the way, I'm in pretty good stead.
Okay. So that's it. So whether you're on your back or whether you're on top of them, it's like their limbs out of the way and then getting chest to chest, or like even so I could see like obviously sprawling them out, being on their back, or taking their back in the rear naked context. And so that is just saying, regardless of the meta that we're dealing with, that's just sort of a universal truth of grappling. What do you call what you do? Are you jiu-jitsu or are you grappling?
Fuck, I don't even know, honestly. There's so many different definitions and terms and whatever else.
You just show up to collect the medal.
Pretty much. That's all I'm interested in. I'm interested in the personal development side of things of it as well. I was talking to a couple of mates of mine and they were saying that their ability to just be calm amidst life chaos has increased exponentially because someone's not sweating in your mouth while they're on top of you, just trying to punish you. And like, it really does gratify everything. It starts to change the scale of the spectrum and how annoyed you get at small things. If someone yells at you, you're just like, all right, whatever, bro. Someone cuts you off in traffic, you're like, okay, buddy, I literally don't care.
I know what you mean because I did dabble in jiu-jitsu for about 6 months, and I was like, yeah, as soon as someone's not trying to choke you anymore, traffic's less stressful. But I did wake up in the middle of the night shrimping. Like I spend so much time on my back, man. Like I'm just a small guy. And like Wollongong's a big footy town, and yeah, I just have so many distinct memories. Kind of like waking up halfway through, and I just like pushing down, moving the hips to the side, and it was fucking getting to me. And then I broke my toe, and I never came back.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah, I'm the classic. Yeah. Super, super casual. But that's the thing. Like, I'm one of the rare people where I'm such a pig for watching sport, especially combat sports. I still end up watching a disgusting amount of grappling for someone who doesn't participate, which is kind of embarrassing to admit.
Very
obviously,
rare.
I get to support amazing grapplers like you. I want to talk about this ADCC compared to your last one. Again, half of our audience probably knows enough about grappling or jiu-jitsu to know what ADCC is. But can you quickly give us your take on what the fuck's ADCC?
So it's pretty much the most important competition that we have in terms of no-gi grappling. There's obviously no-gi worlds every year, but the IBJJF is kind of losing a little bit of flavor with everybody with stringent rules and uniform policies and just strange rule sets and everything like that. Obviously, there's no doping in IBJJF. Like,
so that is very drug tested.
They test all the champions of the black belt divisions. So basically, it's an intelligence test.
Okay.
So if you think you're going to win, you just cycle off for 2 weeks.
Yeah, show up clean.
Or you do what Cyborg did and says, I got to catch a flight. They just dump the podium.
Respect.
100%.
Everyone saw my performance. You don't need to see me collect the medal.
You know I won. I know I won. I don't need the $25 medal. Thank you, sir. See you later.
Wow, that's so sick.
It was
I feel bad for everyone that he dusted, but yeah, respect the hell out of that. Just like playing your own game.
But yeah, so we shifted more towards ADCC. It's always been the more exciting, the more competitive. It's more crazy. You can wear no shirt. You can do all these spectacle things. There's obviously the Sheikhs running in Abu Dhabi, and they used to travel right the way around the world. So 2015 was in Finland, 2017 was in China, 2019 was the first one in America, I believe. I think it was actually in California. Then they moved it to Vegas in 2022.
Gordon's hair was fucked.
Exactly. So now it's becoming a bit more of a spectacle as well. And that's why people are starting to pay more attention because they're interested in the event itself, let alone the constituent elements of the competing and everything like that. And obviously there's a lot of valor in the medal because it's difficult to attain. It's every 2 years. You can't just rock up. You've got to qualify for your spot. So essentially you have the feed in as well of the trials. Each region has trials. There's 2 trials in each region. So there's North America, West and East. There's South America 2, Europe 2, and Australia, Oceania 2. So then you qualify from each region, and then you get put into the bracket of the 16. And then there's invitees. So invitees are previous champions 1, 2, and 3. Top 4 get an invite as well. So I get invited back to the next in 2026 because I came top 4.
Oh, yes. You would have qualified anyway, but
I actually am going to ask if I can still do trials.
What, just to stomp out anyone who thinks they're coming up? You're like, no, stay down. Like
100%. There's no free rides. There's no free rides.
Damn, that's going to ruin some days here and that. I bet there were so many guys doing their calculations. They're like, Josh is out of trials. No. Hey, sorry, you were also not forced to compete in the trials in your region. Is that true? Can you go to US trials? It's just convenience?
No.
Or, okay, you are geographically constrained.
Whatever passport you have is where you're eligible. So I have an English passport. I can go do Europeans. I just don't have to.
Okay. But for most people, just got one shot. That's because I think there has been. Wait, is there East Coast and West Coast on the US? Sorry,
yes.
Did you say? Yeah. So that's where guys have failed at one, flown the plane over to the other side of the country, had another shake.
And then you've got people like Oliver Taza, who is Canadian Lebanese. So he can do Euros twice, and he can do East Coast and West Coast. So he gets 4 cracks.
Does he make it often?
He's very, very good. Oliver Taza didn't win trials this time, came second at all 4 of them, I want to say, possibly. I don't actually remember what his run was this year, but he got invited anyway because a bunch of people dropped out and changed divisions and whatever else. But he's a stud. He's very, very good.
And so obviously, like, it was crazy for me. I think you were confident that you were going to do it the whole time, qualifying for your first ADCC. But it was really cool for me watching you do that and sort of seeing that process unfold. And then as soon as I saw the draw, it's not that I didn't back you to beat one of the greatest grapplers of all time in your ADC debut, but I'm like, it's not the matchup I would have fucking picked. But sometimes those are just the things that life throws at you. So I think it's last time you were on the show, it was post Felipe Pena, wasn't it?
I think so.
ADCC. Right. But sort of now with your second ADCC experience, what was it like going back the second time?
It felt a lot more comfortable. And people always ask me, like, how do you deal with the crowd? And I said, well, look, I was playing under 20s and New South Wales Cup in front of bigger crowds than ADCC. So I'm actually okay with that. I'm customized to that. I played on Anzac Day against the Dogs in under 20s in front of like 30, 40,000. It's a public holiday.
Oh, that would have been sick.
It was the best. I scored this fucking mint try under the sticks too, and the crowd went crazy. It was sick. I had my whole family there watching. It was
everyone's
awesome.
Fucking hammered on Anzac Day.
Everyone's obliterated because they woke up at 4 a.m. to get shit canned, and it was great. But yeah, much more comfortable, much more reserved. I was the only competitor to have qualified for 2022 and 2024 who would have had 100% their experience from event to event, because I had 2 years training in 2022. 4 years training in 2024.
Oh, true. So that really is a nice sort of divider there.
Yeah, huge gain in experience. And since that, I've also competed probably like 65 times, 65 different matches across super fights and tournaments and other things. And so my competitive edge within the sport of jiu-jitsu has definitely started to climb. Obviously, my technical apparatus has definitely climbed, but just getting used to the sport and how it works. And so that was a massive help. I ended up I think I ended up seeding pretty high, actually, based on submitting everybody at trials. That usually is very favorable because they want submissions at the tournament, obviously. And then also with a bunch of dropouts who went to the other tournament, that opened up another opportunity for me to start getting ranked higher and higher and higher. Obviously, I had a really good match with Gordon, didn't win, but did a lot better than a lot of other individuals have in recent years. And so I think that played into a factor as well of me putting myself up a little bit
momentum.
Higher. Exactly right. And so that was the best thing actually for me, having the match with Gordon about six or 7 weeks out from ADCC. I was like, okay, well, this is the best to have ever done it. This is the best that anyone's ever going to feel. And so everything else is going to be underneath that. I'm going to come in with a huge amount of confidence because it can't get worse theoretically than that. And I didn't even do that bad. So for me, it was a massive mental edge going, okay, well, whoever I get matched up against, I feel pretty good. On the first day, I'm definitely going to get to day 2. Then day 2 is where I'm going to really stamp my mark.
I'm glad you sort of touched on, again, thinking about like, this is how it's going to feel. Because one of the things I'm curious about is in that first Pena matchup, I mean, pretty objectively speaking, he is 10 times more accomplished than any other grappler you laid hands on. And was there a feeling of this feels different? Or was it just sort of like, no, this guy's just a little bit ahead of me? Like, because who's the second, up at that point, who was the most experienced or the most elite guy that you grappled against?
Up until that point, just some guy in Australia.
And then straight to Pena, the guy who's submitted the GOAT twice. And I mean,
yeah,
up until recently, it was controversial who was the guy. I guess there's Galval was all, but whatever.
Until it's actually really funny. Until the final day of ADCC, the only 2 people to beat me internationally was Gordon and the guy who beat Gordon.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to be pretty good to get one up on Josh.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, using that as leverage and using that experience, the first time around, to answer your question, it wasn't that he felt too different. It's just he's very experienced. He's done ADCC since 2015. He knows the rules. He knows how to gamify. He knows when to put pressure, when not to put pressure. They know when to exert energy when they have a lot of experience in ADCC, and that's the difference maker.
Yeah, so then he's not like throttling you. And because that's not Pena's style. Pena is not Nicky Rod. He is. No. He looks so physical, and like I'm sure he's strong when he wants to be. But yeah, he very much is he's a craftsman. Fuck.
Yeah, he's just he knows how to game the match. Essentially, when he needs to put points on board, he goes for it, and when he needs to put the pressure on, he goes for it. He did that very well in our second match as well.
Are you frustrated by the gamesmanship, or do you think you're at a point now where you can also engage with it enough? You don't make excuses, hey?
that's just part of the sport. If
Deal
you
with
want to
it.
be if you want to be the best, you don't have to only have the best technique, the best mindset, but you got to know the rules. You got to know the landscape of the game that you're in. It's like business and getting upset that Meta has like $1 trillion in marketing spend per year and you never catch up. It's like, well, yeah, okay, but these are the rules of the game you're in. Play the rules.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So then, yeah, obviously, not underperforming at your first ADCC because already it exceeded any of our potential expectations. But then coming into the second one, like I said, you had much better prep. Not only you literally doubled your experience, but then also specifically in the lead up, I mean, you grappled against the GOAT. Was it 2 weeks out or 3 weeks out?
No, it was like 6 or 7. Something.
And how did that sort of come up? Did you anticipate that match a long way off, or was it sort of this last minute thing? Because had you already planned on going over and finishing off your camp at New Wave? New Wave is Gordon's team for everyone who's listening.
Only for a week and a half, because the way that we're training now is actually very similar to the way that they're training. And so Luke, my coach, has been going to John for about 7 or 8 years, and he's taken a lot from those experiences and basically molded our training in around the same way that they do theirs. The only differentiating factor is their room is full of pros, our room is full of amateurs. But that also gives me a unique advantage where I can work whatever I want, whenever I want, and basically just tinker away with my own design of things, really embody my way to look at things. So the way that the Gordon match actually happened, Ricardo Amendolia is super famous jiu-jitsu guy, does commentary for Flow Grappling now. He's the bald guy. He followed me out of the blue. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I did see the blue tick, check his profile, blah, blah, blah. 2 days later, he sends me a message. He goes, hey, man, what are you doing in 2 Tuesdays' time? And it was like a Thursday afternoon. And I was like, nothing. Why? He goes, do you want to be on Who's Number One? I was like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, who's it against? And he goes, it's against Gordon. I was like, done. But I just have to make sure that my coach and his coach communicate. So
because that is awkward. And because there's a lot of big egos in jiu-jitsu. So, yeah, that would have been intense.
Not really. They actually played it off really well. So essentially what ended up happening was there was 4 people that were offered the match and they all said no. They were like, no, we don't want to do it. No, we don't want to do it. This reason,
would that be not wanting to like look bad close to ADC if they lose, or
when you get to a
don't
certain
know, you don't think
stage,
about it.
even in Australia, there's people in black belt level that literally just don't compete because they want to pad their stats, and that's fucking pathetic. I don't care about losing. The massive gains in my experience in life, not just in jiu-jitsu, have been after losses. Because you've got to reformulate your thinking process. You've got to go back and go, why did that happen? How do I prevent that happening ever again? And how am I going to grow as a result of that? So if you're avoiding losses, you're avoiding all of that stuff on the back end.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the episode. I just wanted to take a second to let you know that Angus has poured all of his knowledge on e-commerce and organic content into an ebook, which is now available. If you want to check it out, head to the show notes or the link in Angus's bio. Thanks.
At the end of the day, no one gives a fuck about your stats.
Yeah.
Literally no one cares.
Only the biggest jiu-jitsu nerd, but yeah. Like people are there to watch it.
And have the coolest story ever. Like this is the guy that took a fight with Gordon on 2 weeks' notice and looked good doing it. Like that's a way better story than turning down the fucking invite.
You don't want to have to tell your kids, be like, yeah, so the greatest grappler of all time offered me a fight. And I said no.
Yeah, I said I was busy. What a fucking loser. So it said yes. Coaches said yes. They both agreed. We flew out on the Monday. The fight was on the Friday evening. And so we had a couple of days there. We actually stayed on Australia time to make sure that we didn't get jet lag. That was a genius way by my coach. He was like, look, we shouldn't try and fuck with our times. The fight's going to be at 10 p.m. in Austin time, which is about 9 a.m. or so our time, which is when I train every morning anyway. So it worked out.
Just don't change a thing.
Worked out perfectly. So we were getting up at 2 p.m. Austin time, going to have breakfast, going to train around 7 or 8 o'clock at Fight Factory with Tackett Brothers, and then we go and on the Friday evening have the match.
Yeah. Fuck the Tackett Brothers. I always forget their names. I feel bad for the one that had to do over 80.
That's William. Andrew's the one that had the crazy match with Cade.
That was insane. That was the under 80s absolutely stole the show at CGAI.
Oh yeah, you could have just done the
I'll
under
be
80.
honest, I didn't watch anything under. I watched what's Merigali, his under 99.
99.
Yeah, that was the lightest weight class I watched at ADCC. I want to get your perspective on, in hindsight, what you make of the whole CJI thing. Because my outsider opinion is that they successfully created a deeper talent bracket in the under 80 kilos. And I know the ADCC has way more than just 2 weight classes. What did you think about it from both weight classes? Because I felt like it was ADCC from my perspective. I mean, the GOAT, the best guy, was at ADCC at the end of the day. And that says a lot. Whereas I actually think the best guy out of the lighter guys was at CJI. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's Cade Rotolo, and he's a 77 kilo champion. I think Mika Galbao gives him a tough match still.
But he submitted Mika at the last. That was
correct.
Disgusting. Everyone,
Correct.
if you want to get into jiu-jitsu, watch Josh Saunders if you want to see people just thrown through the air. But if you want to see some acrobatic and just fast-paced shit, Ruotolo brothers. And the Tackets, but the Ruotolo brothers, it is just another level.
They are very, very good. And it's just because they've had each other the whole way up, just bashing each other in their garage. So their training time and their hours on the mats are just exponentially greater than everyone else. Because
bro, imagine if you had a twin. It probably wouldn't work for someone as big as you because you probably just injure each other. But you're right. It is the perfect environment. The 2 best guys.
I have theorized what I could achieve if I had a clone. And it would be very dangerous for everybody else because I would just not stop training. I just put mats in the garage and just train 7 hours a day at least. Yeah, the whole CJO thing was interesting because obviously there was a little bit of back and forth between each promoter, like one on the left being Mo, one on the on the right being Craig. And there was a bit of a vendetta there because he's like, well, you should go fucking do your own thing. And then he goes, okay, I will. So credit to him because he was challenged and he was like, you know what, I am going to do it. I'm going to figure out a way to do it. And anybody doing that sort of thing, having an end goal and then reverse engineering that backwards is to be respected.
It's like Mo, the timing of Mo's challenge could have been better. He should have kept his mouth shut just until after the event.
That's not Mo's style. Mo's one of those testosterone fueled, like angry
alpha
people.
male.
Yeah, he definitely sort of puts his point across in his way. It's his way or the highway. He's very successful monetarily in his own right, so he basically tells everyone to fuck off. And that can be really good or it can be really bad. And obviously you get some contentious points across the way that you sort of get some arguments and some clashing of heads, but it is what it is. In terms of viewership for the sport, I like that they did the YouTube thing. I think that's fantastic. Do
you have any loyalty to Flow Grappling?
Not necessarily. I mean, I don't really care all that. So this is the difference between me and everybody else, right? Most other people is that I have a lot of business acumen already. And so I've already made a successful business. Well, I've got an online coaching program. I've been doing very well in that regard. And so for me, it's not really that contingent upon how much I get paid per fight. I just know that more eyeballs means more viewership for me, which means more sales.
That you can leverage that, yeah.
And so for me, I sit in a weird position because I was talking to some of the other athletes and they're like, well, we have to do super fights so we can live. And we have to make sure it's X amount of money for X amount of months because otherwise we can't buy food or whatever. And I was diligent enough to work out a coaching model from an online coaching perspective to be able to put that into blue belts, into jiu-jitsu, and then grow that from there. But in saying that, not everybody has the acumen, not everybody has the discipline, not everybody has the arrogance to think that they can do it. And a lot of jiu-jitsu guys are really lazy. And I've had conversations with James Smith. It's the exact same thing. We've spoken
Personal
to
trainers are lazy, yes.
We've spoken to athletes in the sport. We're like, why are you not capitalizing on your audience? You have 60, 70, 80,000 followers. Like you're in a similar boat to me. What could you do with double the audience?
Yeah.
You're kidding.
Like
right?
A lot of them have the people watching them. You're right. It's just like make something, make some valuable content or products. What are you doing?
Make anything.
But and this is the thing. But this is the thing they tell you as a personal trainer. They're like, focus on the craft. Don't be a clout chaser. It's like you can focus on your craft and still share the journey. Like that is a modern reality.
The big thing that did it for me is, I think it was Gary Vee, and he said, if 1 billion people know about your business, are you a millionaire overnight? Absolutely. It's just the law of numbers. 100%. Even if you
could be pretty useless, but if you have enough eyeballs on you, yeah.
Dude, that Wes Watson guy on Instagram, you ever seen his stuff?
Which one's he?
Wes Watson is the ex-prison guy in Miami, and he like makes shitloads of money in fucking Instagram or whatever.
Yeah.
He's a lunatic.
Yeah.
But he's got 2 or 3 million followers, and so he gets paid a shitload of money because he's able to capitalize on the viewership that he gets.
Yeah.
Is he
And
the
it's like, whether
smartest
you
guy?
like him or not. And it's the same with, dude, Trump is the best example. Again,
Yes.
whether you think he's good or bad, he just controls the attention. So he's just always going to be very successful in that. Because again, the political thing, it's like, it's a bit of an attention. A lot of things where you're trying to convert people to something are just an attention game.
If you distract them with bread and circus, they won't revolt.
Love your history, eh?
That's all it is.
There's a bit going on between the ears there.
It actually shocks a lot of people, hey, because they meet.
Sorry, that sounded fucking condescending. Sorry about that.
No, you're right. You're 100% right. I lean into it. That's why I wear pink Crocs.
Yeah.
Because I think it's even weirder. It's even funnier. That's why I like dress the way
Dude,
that I
the
dress.
nail painting thing, everyone keeps asking me if I'm hectic at Jiu Jitsu. I watched so much Jiu Jitsu and I didn't know that was a thing. Literally just been in so many gyms and people see like I just don't look like I lift. So they assume I'm a skinny
That's
grappler.
so funny. That's so funny. You do have a bit of a jiu-jitsu physique.
I do. No, I've run with it one time because as well, I can talk the jiu-jitsu talk.
Yes.
So I talk about recent competition. I'm like, oh man, yeah, absolute animal. Watch yourself.
Yeah. You're like, I'm not even a one-stripe white belt.
Yeah. No, I'm not. Yeah, I reckon I was about a month away from getting a stripe because obviously, like, they got to give you a stripe because they're like, his next payment's coming up. We can't give this clown a different color belt. We'll throw some fucking rubber tape on him.
It's so ridiculous. I hate it.
Fuck. Sorry, what were we talking about? Different ADCCs. I derailed out.
Oh, the difference between both competitions.
Yeah,
So-
that's it.
so-
Yeah.
So obviously, the $1 million on the line. So I got invited, and I said no because I
Okay,
already
and you
committed
say
to
you don't
ADCC.
need money, but a million's a million. Like,
This is the thing. This is the logic that all these on fucking Instagram or just blah 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 blah. They're like, oh, you could be a millionaire, and I was like, okay, hang on. There are 32 people in the competition. 2 of those people are walking away with $1 million. Everybody else walks away with 10 grand. Am I going to say no to 10 grand? No. Did I make more than that the time that I was away in America? Yes. So again, I'm in this weird position that I didn't really have such a motivation to jump ship just to get paid 10 grand to show up. Am I against getting paid 10 grand to show up? Absolutely not. Would I prefer that we get 10 grand to show up to ADCC? Absolutely. I'm not going to sit here and be a fucking hypocrite and say that money doesn't matter. I'm just saying it matters less to me than a lot of these other guys that might be in a different position financially. But that doesn't mean it's the correct decision. That doesn't mean that I have to join them because that's the way that I'm thinking about it. Because I don't think about it like that.
If you're sick of going goblin mode on the same 4 accessory exercises at the end of every single session, head to the notes below and grab our free gymnastics program. It'll change the way you think about accessories forever.
hearing this, I now think you made the right call. Personally, I was unsure like what I would have done if I was you. But now hearing all this, and like I said, just with ultimately the best guy was there, and you want to establish yourself as the best guy.
And to also say that ADCC doesn't have a lot of prestige and a lot of other things as well.
No, it does.
So
there is no more prestigious event in grappling. Whether it's still not the Olympics, but it's definitely the tip of the spear in terms of prestige.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's IBJJF world champions that exist that have won it 3 or 5 times and nobody knows who they are. On the other hand, there are ADCC champions, yes, of course, that are a little bit less known. Like Mateus Diniz is an ADCC champion and not very many people know who he is. But the people who are the most well-known in the sport are built via ADCC.
Yeah, Galvao, Hannah, Gordon. Even before Gordon had double golded, what was exciting about it is everyone was wondering when he was going to double gold or if he was going to double gold. And again, all his biggest matches, again, couldn't get the match against Galvao for so long, got submitted by Penatwai. They've sort of been the Federer, fucking Djokovic, and whoever the fuck else of grappling, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. And so to say that ADCC no longer has any merit to it or anything like that is completely false. It's a complete misattribution. And champions were made that day that will be written in history books, like Giancarlo Bordoni, who's now 2-time 88 kilo champion. It's the first time, and I think it's the second time actually it's ever been done 2-time in that weight class, but it's the first time it's been done consecutively. So now he can ride off into the sunset and sell as many instructors as he wants and sell as many seminars as he wants. The main issue that I had with the argument is that people were saying that there's ADCC champions that are broke. And that's all well and good, but just because you win a world title doesn't mean you
They're
have business
idiots.
acumen
Yeah.
to capitalize on the back of it. It means you're arrogant or you're lazy.
Yeah.
You thought that a world title was going to make you famous. Listen, there's world champions. Think about all the NRL players who've won grand finals. Think about, this is the best example that I had that I rebutted a lot of people on. Robert Horry from the NBA has 7 rings. Who the fuck is that?
Yeah, never heard of him.
Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Magic Johnson, Bill Russell, all these guys, Wilt Chamberlain. Robert Horry has more rings than most of these guys. Bill Russell's the only guy who has more rings than him. And yet, who the fuck is he? Just because he's a world champion and has more rings than Michael Jordan doesn't mean he signs a deal with Nike for making a billionaire.
Yeah.
So it's the disparity between the two camps of making money and being a champion. Yes, being a champion makes help, but then look at Craig. Craig never won anything, and he makes more money than most people in the sport. So it can't be that you have to be a champion to make money. There are guys in Jiu Jitsu who's never done a fucking competition in their entire life, or they've never won anything of valor, and they're famous on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all this sort of stuff. There's this
because they're trying to help people who are interested in it. That's it. No one cares if you're a champ if you can't do something for them, because
Correct.
the only thing you can do for them is entertain them. When you're
It's
competing,
just like thinking,
you're not
it's
making
just-
them better at jiu-jitsu. And even if
It's-
you're shit at jiu-jitsu, if you can make someone better, that just means so much more to me.
personal training in a nutshell. Just because you can deadlift 180 kilos doesn't mean your client gives a fuck.
Hmm.
They don't. They really don't. When I got into the industry, I thought, I'm big and strong. People want to learn how to get big and strong. They want to learn from me. No, actually, it was inversely correlated that I was intimidating the fuck out of all these poor public gym members.
Massive thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was huge. I was too far away from where their standard of
There's a
deviation
sweet
was.
spot.
There is. You're probably the exact sweet spot. You're in good shape and you look a certain way, but you're
Big
not
muscly guys
overly-
like you, I always say on the gym floor, you have to be so smiley, because if you're just, even if you don't have resting bitch face, people will assume you're an arrogant asshole because you're big and muscly.
Correct.
I've seen it happen to so many of my jacked personal trainers. Like a lot of them are sweet, like a lot of them are deeply insecure people, and like that's why they're not going up and smiling and waving, because that's what gets a lot of people into the gym. And I feel really bad for those people who haven't had it pointed out to them, because it takes a fair amount of self-awareness when you've been a big man your whole life. Whereas, yeah, I don't have to worry about that. Like people approach me.
That's actually the reason I went with purple and pink for my colors on Instagram.
Soften it up.
Yes.
Wow.
I was going to go with red, but I was like, nah, it's too much. It's
Yeah,
too hectic.
Can't be
It's
throwing
too
cuts
hectic.
through the air and then just red, blood. Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, I think both tournaments were great for the sport. Having it on the same weekend, do I agree with that? Was it a personal vendetta? Well, I don't agree with it. And yes, it was a personal vendetta. Look,
Have you
I'm
seen
not
a better weekend of grappling
No,
in your
not-
life?
Not even close. Not even close.
Right.
And so were there more eyeballs on the sport completely? Yes. Is that
Yeah.
going to benefit every single athlete that's involved in the sport? Yes. So did it actually help? Yeah, I think so. Am I certain that that competition is going to continue year after year, where there's some donor just giving away $3 million every year? No, I'm not.
Can we quickly talk about that? So do you like the idea, though, of having a major every year, or do you think part of the prestige genuinely comes off the back of it's not every year?
I think the thing that separates ADCC from the IBJJF world titles is that it's not that alone, but it's definitely a factor. The reason why the Olympics are so venerated is because they're every 4 years.
Mm.
So there's 4 years of body, 4 years of work. You've got to be the best for
So
such a
high
long time.
stakes.
Correct.
And then if you're not
exactly
the
right.
best on that day, you could have been the best for 3.5 years. And there's good and bad aspects to that. That's why I sort of, and so if CJI is putting up a milli every year, like, does that get you going?
I don't think they're going to. I know
Okay.
a lot of people in business, and I know some 9-figure entrepreneurs, and I don't know many of them that are willing to just blow 3 million a year.
Mm.
I could be wrong.
No, because
could
they
be
love
wrong.
money. As much as you run the numbers in your head and you're like, oh, I've given away that percentage as a fucking tip. But then it's like, no, the reason you're not that rich is you also don't like money as much as them.
Correct. So do I know where it comes from? No. Do I know how much money they have? No. So it's very up in the
I
air.
mean, I
at
think
this stage.
geographically we can make some assumptions.
Eastern Europe somewhere. Yeah, probably. Probably. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Do I think it's going to be a long-term thing? I have no idea. It could be. It has the potential to do so. The arena that they do it in, the pit or the alley or whatever they called it, phenomenally interesting. It's very different. And so it's going to attract eyeballs just based off novelty alone. So that's another interesting standpoint at the same time, because it's weird, it's different. It's like putting MMA in a cage instead of a ring. It's different, it's strange, it's unique. It doesn't mean it's always going to be good or beneficial or long term, but it's definitely those complicit.
Was the CJI arena an improvement?
In terms of the mat space or in terms of the
yeah,
arena
in terms of the structure. So what I observed is that the ref didn't have to intervene as much, but then I also feel like it did create another aspect to the game where I feel like the Tackets were very good at using the arena to their advantage. Like I said, everyone benefited from the viewers, but it did add another gamification of it. Were you like, oh, I could do some crazy shit in there?
Yeah, 100%. So you could use it to your advantage as well. You can't back up continually. That's the biggest. The
guys use that against you, right?
Correct. The biggest benefit for ADCC originally before the pit was that the borders don't really count. They're just going to let you keep going. If you keep moving, they're going to let you keep going. IBJJF is the worst. As soon as you touch the edge, reset. Touch the edge, reset. It's fucking boring and it's a shit rule set.
If they're in the middle of a transition, it's so hard to recreate the position. Whereas in ADCC, they really do let it settle.
Correct. In wrestling, there are push-out points. If you keep backing up, you get penalized. That would be the ideal middle ground.
Keep it flat. Yeah, that is.
That would be the ideal middle ground.
But I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, so what the pit attempted to do was just that. Keep them enclosed, keep them in a tight space. The issue with the pit is that it's so fucking big, you can't run 2 divisions at a time because no arena is going to be big enough. So the event is going to get drawn out further and further and further and further and further. Like they only had 2 divisions, mind you, and the amount of time and hours that went into that was substantive of like the 6 or 7 divisions going on at ADCC.
We value your input here at the High Performance Podcast. Head to the SpeakPipe link in the notes below and you can leave us a voicemail where you can ask us a question or leave us a topic for us to explore on the show. We hope to hear from you soon.
My only response, I don't believe they ever would implement the system you just described. Do you disagree with that? Do you think it is realistic that they might?
The push-out points or the divisions?
I don't think they would ever implement the push-out points. That's just my feeling, because I feel like that they would feel like they're over-complicating maybe too many rules. Or do you think they
Possibly. I think there's a lot of value to be gained from push-out points, and I think it keeps the action moving forwards towards the center, which negates referee interruption.
So by proxy, does remove ref intervention. To an extent,
yes, exactly right. Because if you're going to get pushed out, you're going to go down by 1 point, or you're going to get a negative. You've got to go back into the middle, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and it's very easy to rule on. It's like you're either over the line or you were. It's not like this like subjective sort of thing.
I think probably 3 examples in wrestling. It's just like if you just keep getting pushed back 3 times, then you get penalized. So it's a repeat effort. If you just got pushed out and they get a point for that. Probably not, right?
Yeah, if you're a complete wet noodle, yeah.
If you're just repeating the behavior, you should get penalized.
Okay. So seeing that we don't have an ADCC next year, I'd like to hear your dream competition schedule and matchups for the next 12 months. And where does Nicky Rod fit into all that? Because I am salivating at that matchup.
As long as he doesn't lather up his body and fucking grease his way to victory.
Yeah, so do you think a lot of people are going to be hesitant to him? Because that's a rumor that gets thrown around a lot. I don't know if we can even prove it either way, but do you expect a lot of his future matchups for his opponents to be pushing for more coverage?
You know what? I don't know. So Gordon did that in 2022 where he wore long sleeves for 1 match and 1 match only, and it was only against Nicky Rod. And they've obviously trained together a lot of times.
Do some people legitimately have greasy sweat, or is that bullshit?
So the people that I've trained with that moisturize, yes, they do, but it's moisturizer, right?
So does everyone do steroids and moisturize, or is moisturizing seen as distasteful because people are like, hey, we know you don't care about being pretty and sexy, and
grams of anabolics are okay. Moist skin is not.
It's so true though. Like, I think I would rather go up against a juiced up guy. A moisturized man is more dangerous than someone who's just jacked to the gills.
It's like the greasy deaf guy from Family Guy. You just can't get a hold of the cunt.
Yeah.
So I'm only going based off information that I have, right? And so
and
4
people's
people have accused
behaviors
him.
and
4 people have accused him of it. It's very strange to get accused of something that you haven't done. Or that you haven't been with a match and experience. So Yuri had a match with him twice. Tanner had a match with him twice. And Gordon had a match with him twice. And then all 4 of those people have said that it was the case. And so are they just buying into the rumor? Is there a bit of pre-context? I have no idea.
What's the protocol if you just want to go and be an absolute... Actually, no, I'm not putting out that information. I'm going to get an anonymous tipster on to discuss what's like the most amount of moisturizer an 80-kilo male can absorb on the morning of competition.
So what ended up happening was that actually at ADCC, they used to get you massages the day before competition. And what they didn't realize is that the time in your skin was about 48 hours. So they were actually inadvertently greasing each other. Then when you grapple without shirts on, it gets even worse. So
Dude,
it was
I
just
don't know how you do it. Even like I've tried to grab onto sweaty guys before in my life. Like it's fucking, or is it just a strength thing? It's like no matter how, no, it's not. At a certain point, even just sweat is fucking impossible, man.
It's not a strength thing, it's a wedging thing. So if you think about it correctly, right? If I have multiple points of connection over one of your limbs, I'm gonna be much better off than I don't. So if I grab your wrist, the weak part of my grip is the part that's open at the facing front. So if you twist your wrist that way, it's going to come out.
Okay.
For me to prevent you from doing that, I recognize that the weak part of my grip's here. I'm going to pull your elbow with my other hand and start to put your wrist on the inside like this. So now the weak part of my grip is actually buttressed by the fact that I can rotate your elbow towards the strong part.
So it is that just extension of no-gi grappling where it's just like the gripping is more sophisticated on every level.
Yeah, exactly. And if I want to grip something tight, I don't grab it with my hand. I grab it and then I rotate it.
Yeah, so it's like you manipulate. Yeah, you're not relying on grip. You're just going to compromise their position. It's like establish some grip, but then again, compromise their position so they can't rip their arm out.
It's the exact same thing as picking up a dumbbell from 20 kilos from beneath your legs and picking it up off the rack fully extended. The more my elbows are away from my body, the more difficult my grip is going to be to maintain. So if I pull my elbows in and when I'm gripping somebody, I pull my elbows and row my lats, my grip by extension is going to be significantly stronger. So there's mechanics and other bits and pieces into it. It's kind of like hook grip in weightlifting, where it's just the fact of friction on the other side is actually going to enhance your ability to hang on to something.
Just the technical fucking library that you have to absorb in jiu-jitsu, it seems like it's just getting fucking insane. Because there are so many pathways to things. Or is that about, like, it's not really about that, it's just developing your own system. Or there's both aspects to it, right? It can't just be you developing your own strategy in isolation. You have to pay attention to everything else that people are doing. Or is that a distraction?
I think for the most part, it's a distraction. Okay. And I think just like Michael Jordan wouldn't have to be around people shooting basketball to perfect basketball shooting, it's the same thing in jiu-jitsu. And so the best in the world are the best in the world at maybe 2 or 3 techniques. And then they're good at everything else. And so you have a natural proclivity towards showing, like Levi, for instance, has unbelievable leg dexterity and flexibility. He was never, ever going to be a wrestler just based on his
But he's
body
not
type.
utterly useless at it either. I mean, the wrestling, he's pushing the wrestling, but maybe like, yeah, I saw him standing above Cade and like, you know, he's got some other aspects to everything else.
Of course. I've never seen his wrestling. I can't comment on to whether it's actually proper useless or
to
not.
be honest.
Would I tech him in a wrestling match in 15 seconds? Yes. But that's not really a fair example either. There'd be wrestlers who would tech me in 15 seconds. But anyway, that's beside the point. But because Levi is the orientation of which he is, he's been naturally guided towards that sort of technique development. So if it was just going to be looking at other people and developing other things, he would have missed out on a lot of expertise. Like he's one of the best De La Riva Bolo leg lock players.
I just want to see a 120 kilo man hit a berimbolo.
I have many times.
Oh,
many times. There's some bigger guys that are pretty flexible, pretty mobile.
It's just such a silly technique.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But yeah, you're gravitated towards certain specific things that you're probably otherwise going to become the best at just because you stick to it. And then there's other things that you do have to be aware of. So like buggy chokes. I've never performed one. I will never perform one. But I know how to escape them because I know that they're prevalent with some competitors.
Surely you can't be thrown on buggy chokes in your weight class, right? It's just a recipe for getting power bombed, or?
It's fucking stupid. It's a
Seems
stupid
like a
technique.
smaller guy thing.
Yeah,
And
it's
it also seems like, can you blow your knee out even trying to tighten the choke on someone? It seems like it's even putting like, you're almost like fucking heel hooking yourself.
You got to be pretty flexible, and a lot of techniques where your knee is getting externally rotated regarding your foot, it's just LCL pressure. And so a lot of people just blow their LCLs out all the time doing a bunch of shit.
I'm glad you brought up mobility, because I think mobility is something that, like, I can see the value of it, again, when you look at someone like Levi for guard retention. But I think a lot of people also talk about mobility helping, like, oh, well, if I'm more mobile, then you can twist my arm or my knee further. But I don't know if you need to lean into losing strategies like that. Like, I think that's, I think it's probably, this was something you sort of touched on. Yeah, you don't respect the whole mobility thing, at least in your game.
No. I think mobility is the most overrated attribute you can put time into.
Overrated. Okay. That's
most overrated. Because the percentage gain you're going to have in your mobility regarding your proximal joints is very small for the most part, especially when you're training jiu-jitsu a lot of times. So what you could do is you can spend 6 to 8 weeks trying to get a better fucking hamstring stretch or a better psoas stretch or something like that. Or you could figure out how to use frames correctly in guard retention where you don't necessitate extra range of motion. Like,
so
I'm not
the same way that strength can be a cope for technique, mobility can be a cope for technique, maybe in its own way.
100%. Most of those guys that have freak guard retention would not have that if they weren't as flexible as they are. That doesn't mean that they're not skilled. It doesn't mean they're not developed and use their abilities to themselves. Like, if I'm fucking strong. Of course, I'm going to select techniques that allow me to express that. I'm not mobile as much as these other people. So I wouldn't select techniques that would allow me to express that because I just don't have.
But it's also something interesting you were sort of bringing up recently. You've sort of moved on from strength training. Is that something you recommend across the board for people at any level of the game, assuming you're not a complete slob? Or do you think that depending on where you're at in terms of your physical qualities, like, could you give some benchmarks for like certain sized grapplers and maybe contextualize it with having a style like you, I guess, rather than the more classical butt scooter?
It's a good question. The only reason I start to tend away from it is because I've been lifting for 14 years now and I have such a width and depth to my strength and power and attributes that I don't need to enhance them anymore. And going off the rule of thumb that it takes you about 10% of the effort to maintain what you built rather than the effort that it took you to build it, that I can get away with training once a week in a very small capacity and still maintain all of my physical attributes. And for me, looking at it deductively, I looked at my game and I'm like, do I need to get stronger? No. Do I need to get more explosive? No. Do I need to get better at the sport? Yes. Okay, well, I'm going to measure my training across the board and I'm going to put water into the buckets where I need to put water in the buckets. And for me, strength training is just not one of those things. So for me, contextually, I don't recommend that I go and train. Yes, I do recommend that everybody else trains because of longevity, because of joint health, because of structural integrity, all those sorts of things. You're probably looking at about 2 to 3 sessions max per week, just like the average gym person that wants to lose 5-10 kilos. General preparation, something around that sort of thing. I don't think you need the bench press, squat, or deadlift if you don't want to. I think the tax on something like a deadlift would probably outweigh the benefit for jiu-jitsu because jiu-jitsu is very physically intensive across the board. You could get away with doing quite a little amount, quite a low volume, and still get a lot of benefits from it.
Yeah. And like, that's what I mean. Like, your strength is pretty low. Like, I feel like you could still easily pick up 200 kilos any day of the week.
Oh man, I deadlifted 250 kilos for 10 reps the other week, a few months ago, just because my mate was doing 3x3 at 250. And I said, I'm going to do your whole volume in one set just to spite you. And I hadn't deadlifted in like 12 months.
Oh man, I distracted you as well from the competition schedule. We ended up fucking talking about Nicky Rod and moisturizing too much. But so yeah, and as well, so you've done Penner, you've had a shot against Gordon. Do you think realistically you have a chance to fight Galvao before is Galvao retired?
He's retired.
Okay, so we'll never get in that one.
Yeah.
Who are the other GOATs that you need a chance to fight?
Ooh.
I mean, we want to do them all again, but yeah, let's get the rest of this dream run done.
I mean, in my weight class, I don't know if there's any like GOATs that I would call like legends of the game or something like that. Like that really makes sense at this point. Vinny Magalesh is like a big name in the sport. He was the guy that Craig broke his leg and he just kept going and didn't tap and his whole leg and shin was just destroyed. but he's got a destroyed chin. He's old. He's kind of out of the game.
So that really fucked him up. I mean, it looked bad.
Since that match has not been the same. So that really doesn't make sense. The guy that beat him at ADCC this year, I destroyed in 2 minutes. So like MMA math, kind of whatever. It's not exactly how it works, but I'm going to run with that theory anyway.
Yeah.
I'll use the same answer that I said at Flow Grappling, where they were like, "Who else do you want?" Everybody and anybody. I really don't care. To be fair, like I want to test
because
myself.
I couldn't think of anyone else. Like Galvao was the only one. I just was unsure if he was still competing. Like that's objectively a legend from the 80s. Yeah. But yeah, outside of that, I was like, no, where is there? And because you know how we made the comparison to Federer, Jokic, Nadal, like with Penna, Galvao, and like I know Ryan's so much younger than them, but it's like he has been in the game for a while because he established himself so young. Also, he's had so many health issues. I wouldn't be surprised if he manages to grapple for another 10 years. I also wouldn't be surprised if he's absolutely done in 2 or something like that. So there almost is, we do require a new guard. And I sort of look at you, I look at Nicky Rod. Who else is in this conversation of like, who could be the new big 3?
Shit. Luke Griffith is definitely one of those guys that is kind of understated but very good. He lost to Penner in the finals. He's from New Wave. He's a South African kid.
Okay.
He was the one who got beat by Penner in the finals.
Yeah.
He's very good. Trained with him a bunch over the week leading up to ADCC. But I don't know. It's kind of hard to say this one, and I think you're right. There's a little bit of a lapse within that next sort of coming of the guard type of thing. And we're going to have to wait until it develops. I think
when those guys haven't gone anywhere, like it is the same as tennis. They are doing their job. They've stayed on top of it. Credit to them. They're like, no. You're going to have to earn it.
I think personally, the more exciting divisions probably seem to be around the 77 kilo.
Yeah.
Mika Galvao, Cade Rutolo, Andrew Tackett, all these guys that are very exciting.
Way younger.
Watch. I think way younger, yeah. But you generally have way older people in the heavyweight division as well, just like MMA. You've got Alexei Oleinik, who was like 42, still fighting in the UFC. You've got Cyborg, Wagner, and Lovato, all over 40 years of age, all medaling at 40 years of age. That's very impressive. And because at lighter weight divisions in every single sport, it's much more contingent upon speed. And speed is the first attribute that tends to start to go down as you get older. And so in the heavier weight divisions, or in the lighter weight divisions rather, you see them start to bump up their weight classes from 66 to 77, 77 to 88. In the heavyweight divisions, we don't really have a choice, but we're not contingent upon speed as much, so it doesn't really affect us all that much.
Yes, you're absolutely cooking. Are we the same age? Are you 31?
I'm 27.
Oh my God. Yeah, we've got time on our hands here. Not me so much. I'm doing track. I require speed. I'm fucked. I was born slow too. But yeah. Fuck, next 10 years is looking good.
Easy
bad
next
for
10
everyone.
years.
Jesus Christ.
Yep.
All right.
So when it's all said and done, Adele actually stole my thunder a little bit. I wanted to be the first ADCC gold medalist from Australia. But congratulations to her. She did a great job. She actually double golded, the first ever absolute female winner and the first ever 55 kilo gold medal from ADCC. So that's to be respected. That was fucking awesome to watch.
That's huge for an Aussie.
So I've had to change my goal from first gold medal for Australia to first male gold medal for Australia, which I'm completely.
Yeah, to add a word. Yeah, she got you.
I had to add a word. She got me. She'll forever have that over me, and I'm really pissed off about it. But it's okay. It's okay.
Had to compromise.
Exactly. So I've still got that in my sights. I still am very capable of having that happen. I took a lot of wealth of experience from this ADCC and a lot of things that I'm going to change looking forward to the next one in 2026, just based on some conditioning stuff, just based on a little bit more energy efficiency. I've realized that the best people who perform the best aren't necessarily the most technical. They're obviously very good technique-wise, but they know when to conserve their energy and they know when to use their energy so that it looks good.
Become more relevant since the wrestling thing. I feel like I never used to see grapplers gas so much. Or is this me watching gi? Or is this just me not watching enough jiu-jitsu? The pressure aspect of it has always been a big game. I feel like it's much more deliberate now to try to gas out your opponent before attempting to dominate them.
Well, think about it like this. Would I rather verse you in a 100-meter sprint after you've done a marathon or not?
Yeah. And that's what I mean. Even if you were forced to do a marathon, maybe in the last kilometer, maybe I could jump it. Maybe. It is crazy what being gassed does to even the craziest warrior.
Exactly. And so that's the thing. Fatigue makes cowards of us all. So why would I not try and impart that upon my opponent? And that's a big part. I actually got told this morning. I didn't realize this, but Penner wasn't going to do the gold medal match because of my match with him. Because he had Gordon in the 20 minutes, and I think he had a 10-minute overtime with Gordon, maybe, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was overtime. It's a huge day. So he had first match with Brandon Reed, went to a points decision. Then he had his second match with somebody else. Then he had his match with Gordon on that day. Then he had me in the morning, and then he had Luke at night, which in the afternoon. Which credit to him, that's a lot of grappling.
He's a beast.
That's a lot of grappling. But apparently, in an interview after my match with him, they said that his family had to motivate him to go and do the match because he was going to pull out.
And no one's thinking about, oh, this guy just went to war with Josh Saunders for fucking 15 minutes today already. Like, all they see is just the performance for what it is. Like, it's so hard to just take the context with you. Like, fucking hell.
Exactly. So for me, looking forward, it's all about energetic efficiency. And basically, I didn't really do this 22 to 24, where I had a very strict, regimented regime where I'm going to do something for 2 years, recognizing that it's going to be 2 years away. My mindset based off the back of this ADCC is like, I got 2 years to work.
Okay. What off the first one, you feel like you gave yourself a chance to celebrate and just relax a bit, which I think is like totally him. Whereas this one, you're like, ADC is the standard. Like, this is just normal shit.
Pretty much.
We never,
fuck yeah. Pretty much. It's weird. Jimmy Carr has this really cool saying that he said at a show one time. And they're like, what's it like being famous? And I'm not at all famous. Like, in Jiu Jitsu, people know who I am, but I'm not at all famous. And Jimmy Carr said, it's like living in a really small town, but you have outsiders because everyone knows who you are and you have no idea who they are. And it's just it's the perfect sort of thing. So I deal with it. I think I deal with it pretty well, but it's kind of weird. You don't want to get your head too big and soak up too much of that attention and stuff. And because people really give a fuck when you're winning and people really don't give a fuck when you're losing. And so that can start to play on your identity and all that sort of stuff.
Quick, so yeah.
Even for me, in terms of celebrating, like I can rest my hat on saying that I've came top 4 in the world at ADCC. But for me, mentally, it's just another day at the office. Like if that was another competition, I would be celebrating the exact same way. I didn't really. I'm just back into training, back into the normal swing of things. And I think that's a healthy way to look at it.
Yeah. Fuck. I mean, like I said, it sort of just seems logical. You had your first ADCC. It was a huge learning experience, and you also didn't attack the prep for this one as aggressively, whereas now this one, it just keeps leveling up, and it's really exciting to watch. And like I said, yeah, congratulations, just at the pinnacle of the sport and doing the country proud. Yeah, like I said, we got Ray Gun representing us, and that's tough. But then we got Josh Saunders, and I'm like, all right, at least we're doing some damage on the mat somehow.
Yeah, exactly.
Shout out to Ray Gun. Shout out to Josh. So if I'm interested in like getting coached by you online in jiu-jitsu, or is it just getting people in shape, just pitch that where I can get involved.
So I don't do any personal training whatsoever anymore. I packed that up when I realized that everybody who I was coaching for that was a blue belt. And so I just completely shifted to jiu-jitsu.
No white belts. You wouldn't coach me. Fuck.
Oh no, I do white belts, but I don't do like the fat loss, strength conditioning, any of that sort of stuff anymore.
Serious grapplers.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm starting to move now into a little bit more serious competitors because I think that that's what my personal brand has become about, being a serious competitor rather than like a hobbyist who wants to rock up a couple of days a week. I think my program is better suited for legitimate competitors who are hungry to win, make a name for themselves and do all this sort of stuff. And eventually what I want to do is start sort of like a media company where I can take athletes in, I can show them a system and a play for how to monetize themselves as an athlete, and then take a percentage of what they do for setting up that infrastructure. And so
especially like for Aussie grapplers, making sure that Aussie grapplers, because it's harder for us to get overseas to make money off competitions and build a profile. So making sure that they can squeeze every drop out of the promotion that they are getting.
Dude, even Brazil, the conversion rate from the Brazilian dollar to the US dollar is extortionate. So they can't even afford to get over to America based on just the way that they live. And Roosevelt Souza was a guy that competed with me on the weekend. And I had dinner with him in Miami afterwards when I went for some time off. And he said to me, he goes, I used to sell water bowls in the favela, in the street, to try and make enough money to get my way over to America. And I was like, dude, that's fucking crazy. Imagine if you had some sort of infrastructure where you could monetize your ability to be able to gain attention so that you didn't have to do that. Like, all credit to you. That's a phenomenal story. But I want that to be the underwhelming minority rather than the majority, especially from people in those sorts of situations. Now, Australia is not that bad. Definitely one of those things that we want to have, starting to move people towards being responsible, being a fucking mover and shaker on Instagram or TikTok or anything like that. Because you don't have to be special to do it. You really don't. People are like, oh, but I haven't won anything. Neither of a bunch of these other dorks on YouTube that teach people how to do jiu-jitsu. All you have to do is teach your personal experience and be willing to help other individuals get better. That's all you need to do. And that's all I do. I'm not special. I'm not some fucking crazy business guru. Like, I'm definitely autistic, and when I want to do something, I do it. But so is everyone else in jiu-jitsu anyway. So you already have the base fundamentals to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's not like it's an industry full of geniuses.
It's not that.
No.
If you want access to a community of like-minded coaches, head to the notes below and join our free school community. I'm in there every week doing Q&As, and there's plenty of educational content on the way as well.